Hello and welcome to Women in Post, a podcast and web series for women in post-production by Women in Post-Production. Today on the show, we'll be speaking with Jillian.
This is why I make the films I do, is because there's so many secret, shameful things that women are keeping to themselves that don't have to be secret and shameful, and there's no community built around it.
So why don't we start out today by talking about how you got interested in film?
Sure. Well, I grew up watching movies, and so I started putting on plays in my living room when I was 4, and then got my hands on my parents' camera probably a year later. And so I've been making movies since I was a kid. So I always knew I loved film, and I just didn't believe it was a realistic career. And I thought I would have to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. And then when I got to college, I was like, no, there's a film program and I'm going to apply. And that's kind of, I was born this way. Throughout high school, I used to recreate Britney Spears music videos, which is how I actually got interested in editing. But then, I was accepted into the film program in college, and then I knew I wanted to edit. And my goal after school was to move to New York and become an assistant editor, and that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. What was the breakthrough in starting your career?
I moved to New York with no money and lived in a room with another girl and had an internship with MTV during the day, and then worked at a restaurant for $3.75 an hour at night until 4 a.m. and did that again and again. And then my internship didn't lead to a job like I was told that it would. So I quit and I started temping, and I got a temp receptionist position at a post house who offered me a full-time job. And then I moved up there, and I was at that company for three and a half years, something like that. And I learned so much there.
Let's talk about that just a little bit, unpack it a little bit. Are there any mistakes that you made when you were getting started out at the post house that you learned from that could help other people?
Yes. I one time was tasked with archiving an old job onto an archival hard drive we had, but I had another dailies hard drive plugged in, and I accidentally archived my old job over top of the dailies drive of Eva Mendes footage. A lot of tears that day.
Yeah.
I have never done that since.
You've never done archiving since?
I have never erased a drive since, because I have been so careful in my organization in post ever since. But that was my first year of being an assistant. I feel like the first year of being an assistant editor, that was certainly one of the hardest of my career, because there's so much you don't know, and I didn't understand frame rates and codecs and conversions and post workflow and onlining and all this stuff. I had to really learn it all in 1 year, and I was jumping back and forth from Avid, which I had never worked on, to Premiere, and their workflow was so different, and it was very stressful. I developed a lot of anxiety that year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What did they do when all the footage was just gone? What did they I don't know. It just seems like the end of the world would happen,
They never found out.
What?
Because it was an Avid job, I already had all the MXF media, and because we were cutting a Spanish version of a spot, Company 3, the house that was doing the color, already had the English version of the dailies there. So I just guessed, and when they called me for the dailies, I said, "Oh, you already have it because you have the English version." And they did, and it worked out, and I got out of it relatively unscathed, but with crippling anxiety, thinking someone's going to find out. And whoever the vault person was after me, I'm sure eventually did have to manage that mistake I made. But yeah, I did tell one of the associate producers, and we were able to figure everything out and make it so that nobody really found out except for us, and we managed it all, and expectations were met and everything was fine, and there were dailies in other places. So, but yeah, no, that's a poor move.
That's really incredible, though. So the person that helped you, was she your supervisor?
She was an associate producer at the time, and I was an assistant editor. So same level, just different departments. And she worked with me because she didn't want, she wanted everything to be okay too. I did go to her and admit what I had done.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
That company doesn't listen to this interview.
Secrets out, surprise.
I really love them, and they're really wonderful, and they did so much for me, But the first year of assistant editing mistakes can be made if you're not properly supervised, when you're still learning. So haven't done that one again.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, so assisting, editing, chaos, and then what came after that?
Oh, well, at that time, when I had been there for 3 years, I had been assisting for a while. I was feeling kind of complacent, and I really wanted a challenge, and I had a camera, and I had always been interested in trichotillomania, which is a disorder where people pull out their hair. It affected a friend of mine growing up, and I was always, I don't know, I just always remembered it because I felt like there was nothing I could do to help her, and so many people had it, but people say the wrong thing, and I just kind of wanted to explore it more. So I took my camera out into Washington Square Park and just started asking people in the street if they had heard of it and what they knew, and more people than not had heard of it, but nothing had really, there wasn't a lot of media attention on it. So I just decided, well, I'm going to make a short film about this to show my boss that I can do more than what I'm doing currently. So I launched a Kickstarter, which at the time, that was 2012, people didn't really know about Kickstarter. And we got donations from, I think, 20 different countries. And all of a sudden I was making something that I was getting emails from 15-year-old girls in Chile who were asking me how they could be a part of it and thanking me for doing this because they felt so alone. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a flame room spending $2,000 an hour to whiten and unwhiten and re-whiten a model's teeth for a Crest commercial. So knowing the amount of money we were spending on that and seeing how far 30 grand could go to make a difference, I quit my job in New York and I moved back in with my parents in the Bay Area and spent the next year editing Trickster. But luckily, through everyone that I had met at that company, I got my graphics, my music, my color all donated from people that worked there. So it was really wonderful. And that company was so supportive of me. And that's kind of how I fell into documentary.
Wow. That's incredible. So can you tell us, I had never heard about Trickster before, and then I watched the trailer online, which I'll include a link in the description if that's okay with you. When you were just starting to make it and you said you started a Kickstarter campaign, was there anything that you did to get attention to the Kickstarter, or did people just find it on their own?
That's a hard question because it was so long ago now. I've run 4 successful crowdfunding campaigns, so I definitely know how to build an audience and get attention for a film. But that first one, I really don't remember. I think a lot of teen girls found it, and someone posted on a Tumblr because we had a lot of traffic coming from Tumblr, which was interesting because I didn't use Tumblr. So I went over to Tumblr and made an account and started seeing, because that's generally who it affects the most, or at least that's who we talk about it affecting the most, or people who talk about it the most tend to be teen girls. So I think that's where a lot of the traffic came from, them showing their parents or something. But yeah, it spread to other countries, and I'm still not really sure how that happened. But what it showed me is that there was a need, there was a market for this. There were people in need, and we now know that 1 in 25 people have some sort of body-focused repetitive behavior, be it hair pulling, nail biting, skin picking. They're all under the same umbrella of disorders. So it's actually super, super common, but people just don't know about it. And so you have these kids, because they're generally diagnosed first in children, who are doing this thing that their parents can't understand, that their doctors don't know about. And it's really isolating. And so Trickster still, we released it, I think 5 years ago. It still continues to be watched on iTunes and Amazon and make a difference, I hope.
Wow. So how do people get over the disorder?
The theme that we believe in and that we tried to portray is acceptance, because the reality is that a lot of people that have Trick won't ever get over it. Some people do for several years and then they relapse. But I think the common theme that we can all relate to, whether we have Trick or not, is just self-acceptance. Not, I'll love myself when I stop pulling. I'll love myself when I lose 10 pounds. I'll love myself when I get that job. But to love yourself right now and to let that be, and then see what comes from that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's take a moment to dive into the clip that you sent over. And this is a clip from your documentary, Second Assault.
Mm-hmm. I remember telling you what happened, and then you both left the room, and then you got on the phone with someone and you came back in and you said under Arizona state law, it's considered consensual. Don't mix alcohol and beauty.
I said that.
And that is the police officer, like not an actor.
Yes.
Wow. What was it like for you?
It was one of the hardest moments of my life, which makes for good filmmaking. So yeah, I before shooting that, it was funny because I was wearing both the filmmaker's hat and the subject's hat. So I had a bit of a breakdown. I like fell on the floor and was sobbing. And then as I was trying to pull myself together, I had my team that was setting up and I looked at them and I was like, I was gasping for air. I was like, you guys need to be filming this, you know? And then I pulled myself together before he came in the room. And then that is like the climax of our film, that clip where I'm confronting him about this. Mm-hmm.
And this is the film that's been through the film festivals?
Yeah. I won a directing award, 2 crowdfunding awards, a best documentary award, or 2 audience awards, a best documentary award and a crowdfunding award. So lots of good things came from it. And we went to a bunch of festivals and touched a lot of people. And I was expecting a lot of hate and we prepared for that, but we didn't receive any when we were at the screenings, which was really lovely.
Mm-hmm. Does it feel different to make a documentary about your personal experience versus a documentary about somebody else's?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the most important thing when making a film is trust, or making a documentary about a sensitive subject, which is kind of my brand, is trust, and having the subjects trust you. And, you know, it's a lot of responsibility taking on somebody else's story. And I made Second Assault along with my co-director and creative partner, Amy Rosner. And I kind of put my trust in her. And one thing we were saying the entire time we were making that film is we don't have to make it. We'll just shoot this bit, but we don't have to use it. We'll just shoot this, but we don't have to use it. And then over 2 years, eventually we got to the place where we're like, okay, we're going to use it. And then I trusted her completely. And while I didn't edit that film, I did jump in and work on certain sections. Sometimes we jumped back and forth, but I let her take the reins on the story because I knew that I couldn't see outside myself. And I think, especially in documentary, you have a lot of filmmakers that make personal projects that try to be hands-on with everything. And one of the biggest mistakes I thought I made with Trickster was not having a second editor come on and look it over, because I cut that and shot it myself. And I really didn't want to make that mistake with Second Assault. And I think the work is just I'm so much more advanced now as a creative than I was when I started making Trickster, because I was 23 when I started that film also. And I think it shows.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That reminds me of something that when I was in cross country in high school, like forever ago, they would always say, you know, you don't focus on the finish line. You focus on making it to that next tree in front of you, making it to the stop sign, just pushing a little bit further. And once you get there, you can, you know, set the next goal.
Right. Because if you look at it all and all the work you're going to do, it's really overwhelming. Like, I'm going to put my name out there forever. People will be able to Google me and know this information about me. Is that something I want to do? Is this a risk I want to take, personally and professionally?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just little baby steps, and we have total control and we can do whatever we want with it. That was the way I was able to get through it. Yeah.
Was it important for you to have women working on the film with you versus men?
Absolutely. I try to work with women as much as I can. I try to hire as many women as I can. And a lot of people that worked on this film also worked with me on Trickster, producers, cinematographers, sound mixers. But yeah, working with women outside of just it being a sensitive subject that I think women can tend to be more empathetic towards, working with women is hugely important to me.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of the times that I'm not a writer, but I thought that I could write my experience and put it forward to my crew and say, hey, let's make this into just a short thing, because I had experienced a miscarriage, and just that nobody had ever talked to me about it, the possibility of it, and it had never occurred to me that it could happen. And then when it happened, everything happened so fast. So I wanted to make a doc about it, and the writing was terrible, and I submitted it to my crew, who are all guys, because I've never had the opportunity to work with a woman who wasn't an actor. And like, it didn't get shot down. It was kind of like, they kind of freaked out, like, whoa, like this is beyond our realm. We don't really want to think about this. So we didn't do it. And honestly, like, I need to work on my writing skills too. But just seeing that you made this movie that was so personal and so like, I can't imagine how you wouldn't feel so vulnerable every single day because this is out there. Like, that's just transformative and brave and powerful and all that. And so kudos to you.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because I have several friends that have had multiple miscarriages. And this is something that we're talking about. Like, something needs to exist about this. Something needs to exist about this. 1 in 3 pregnancies are ending in miscarriage, and nobody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. And women don't feel like they can talk about it. And you're told, oh, we can't say anything before 12 weeks just in case. But then you're isolating yourself and you're alone. And this is just another, like, this is why I make the films I do, is because there's so many like secret, shameful things that women are keeping to themselves that don't have to be secret and shameful. And there's no community built around it, you know? And just watching some of my friends go through what they've gone through blew my mind open about fertility and shit that women deal with. And fucking men don't deal with any of it. I'm sick of it.
You know? Yeah, I mean, I think that's true in a sense, but my husband was so devastated at the same time. And like, after I experienced my miscarriage, like, I wound up in the hospital with like hemorrhaging issues and literally had to fight. I felt like I was fighting for my life too in the process. And like, when I made it through to the other side, like, I was terrified that it was going to happen again. But like, I had that fight that I got through. It was a physical manifestation of overcoming my grief. And he never had anything like that. Mm-hmm. You know, and like, as he's got kind of like a conqueror mentality. And since he didn't have anything that he could muscle through, like, and conquer, his journey to recovery, or journey to acceptance and to moving on, was a lot longer and I feel like a lot harder than my own.
It's such it's a trauma. It's a trauma that happens within your own body, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can have physical experiences as a result of that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it just, like, it's not something that goes away in an hour, like they show you in the movies. Like, oh, I just had a heavy period. It's not what it's like, you know? And I didn't know that until one of my best friends went through too. So yeah, you know, it's something, it's a film that needs to be out there that I'm definitely, like, I've been considering, like, how could I make this, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know yet, but I care about it. And I'm sorry you went through that.
Oh, thank you. So what are some other projects that you have on the horizon?
That is a good question. I'm kind of in a not transition, but I'm in a strange place in my career where I'm not, I think when you come off of a project like a documentary that takes years, you know, you're just a bit tired and you just want to hang out for a minute instead of like talking about hair pulling for 5 years or talking about rape for 3 years. So I don't have another film that I'm making right now. Right now I'm freelancing at post-production houses and production companies and cutting stuff until I figure out the next step. Like I said, I'm moving, and so my life is kind of scattered at the moment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the if you spend 5 years on a project, like, other than cutting the film and shooting it, obviously, and writing it, like, what else has been the majority of where you spend your time? It's
mostly writing emails, audience building, social media posts, working on distribution, it took me 3 months to get Trickster ready for distribution, cutting special features, designing the DVD label, getting DVDs made, shipping DVDs out of my closet, out of my apartment when they were ordered. It's just, there's so many, like running a website, there's so many details that you don't even think about when you start out. You're just like, oh, I'll just make a film. But no, it takes years, and it's a full-time job, which I did on top of another full-time job. And same with Second Assault. I mean, we started an LLC and, you know, had to hire an accountant and worked with a survivor advocate who coached us on how to handle press and reaching out to press and taking interviews. And it's just, there's a lot of things that go into it outside of the creative part of filmmaking. And there's a lot of producer hats you have to wear.
Mm-hmm. So
not
maybe
my favorite.
What?
It's not my favorite. I like creative producing, like finding locations and researching characters, but I don't love, the film is done. Now we have to distribute, get it into universities, get it into police departments, things like that. It's not my favorite.
Most of these relationships that you already had, are you reaching out to them through email or social media?
Got everything. I've reached out to people via Twitter before that have come on board, either as a subject in my film or, WIMPS has been a really good resource, reaching out to people like, hey, who's distributed educational before? Can we hop on a call? Can we talk about that? Reaching out to individual universities, individual police departments. Hey, I have this film. You can use it as a training tool. Where does a short documentary live these days? Because I didn't make this to be paid for it. I'm not looking to sell it. It would be great to have people license it because it is a useful training tool. But I'm not looking to put it on like an Amazon or a Netflix. So I just released it via Huffington Post. I reached out to my contact at HuffPost who had interviewed us 2 years prior, and she agreed to do a world premiere via Huffington Post. And so just things like that, coming up with things, thinking about things, going to meetings, asking questions, being open to ideas. There's no rule book, so you can make it up as you go.
Uh-huh. And WIMS, that's Women in Motion Pictures?
Women in Media Production Salon.
Okay.
Yeah. So it started out, Emily Best is the founder, and it started out with her just having a few women over at her place to get together and talk about things in the industry, maybe watch a reel, things like that. And then now I think there's almost 3,000 members globally. And it's been really awesome. For example, last year, 2 years ago, whenever we were in we were on the film festival trail and we were trying to deliver our film to a festival in London, but they were struggling with downloading our DCP. So right that day, it was like the next day was the festival, and the festival was like, if you can't get us your DCP, we're not going to try downloading any more links. And if you can't get it to us, we can't show your film. And I knew people had already bought tickets to see Second Assault. At the same time, someone on WIMPS posted an email saying, hey guys, is there anyone in London that can download a DCP and walk it over to this festival? So I reached out to that filmmaker. She was playing at the same festival. She was having the same problem. We posted on WIMPS. We found a WIMP in London who downloaded our films, put it on a drive, and walked it over to the theater and handed the drive over. This all happened within several hours. Filmmakers in LA, New York, communicating with a filmmaker in London who did us this favor, just a favor. Just women helping women, which I thought was pretty extraordinary.
That's amazing. So if people want to find them online, is it like a membership platform? Do you have to pay to be part of it, or is it open to the public?
There is a Facebook group that you can join, and then WIMPS is mostly an email list, which I think you have to be recommended by another member who will give you the link. So you have to find someone that you know that's already on WIMPS to get on WIMPS.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any other groups that people should be aware of, should be participating in to really advance their careers as a woman in post-production?
Well, I think all the Facebook groups, there's so many Facebook groups that are awesome, but for me, I'm in one called WIMPS Unscripted, which is for documentary filmmakers, which has been awesome because it's sort of this kind of tighter-knit, smaller group of women who meet every couple months and talk about our projects, or we have guest speakers that come in and talk about distribution or whatever it is that us doc filmmakers are needing information on these days. And then I'm also part of the Video Consortium, which is another place for documentary or unscripted filmmakers to meet. And so they have a website that you can apply through. And those have all been really helpful because I think filmmaking, especially freelancing, I work from home a lot, can be really isolating, and being able to go and sit in a room of other women who are mirroring your concerns back at you just is everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As you're freelancing now, I feel like you have a different take on freelancing than what most people would consider. Like it's different working as a freelancer for a post house than it is for, say, working as a freelancer on Upwork or Fiverr, right?
I feel like I've heard of Fiverr before, but I don't know what that is.
These are like platforms online where random companies or individuals can go and like request that work would be done, and they'll upload whatever resources that they have. It's like random. It's like doing work for random people that you find online and submitting applications. You submit really more applications than you ever do work.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I think growing up kind of I grew up in boutique post houses. I worked for Rock, Paper, Scissors for a year, which is a big commercial post house here. They also do like most of Netflix documentaries. I kind of know a lot of people in the ad world. And so most of my gigs come from word of mouth or reaching out to an agency and being like, hey, I've worked at these 5 places. And they're like, oh, you know the drill. Like, we want you in here. And so in that way, it's really great. But I find myself always caught in between advertising and documentary, and advertising pays more bills, and documentary kind of feeds my soul a little bit more. So up until 2 years ago, I was full-time at a ad agency for about 1.5 years, and I left it to try to throw myself more into the doc world. So last year, I spent most of the year cutting a 6-part documentary series, which was really awesome. And I'd never worked on a series before, so it was interesting learning how to craft 6 story arcs and then also 1 giant season arc. And now I'm up for a couple doc features, one that I really want, that I hope I get, but who knows, and currently I'm freelancing in ad agencies. So I've been in and out of agencies the last month or so. Mm-hmm. So that's how I'm doing paying most of my bills these days.
Yeah. Well, when you say you're up for a couple of doc features, what does that mean?
It means I've met with the producing teams, I've met with the director, and I'm waiting to hear back to see if they'll hire me to edit them.
Oh, gotcha.
So fingers crossed for me.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk to? I feel like we've covered a lot of bases just in general, but
one of the things that I was in a room with some women at an agency last week, some like up and coming creative women, and we started talking about the scarcity myth, which I think is really interesting because I used to feel that way. And I think a lot of women of an older generation coming up in this industry felt like there was only one slot for them. And so they felt like they had to compete against other women. But our generation is now recognizing there's actually abundance and there's space for women to lift each other up and hire each other and come up as an army, and sit in these spaces that I think were kind of reserved. Like the offices used to just be all male places, and those where we're meeting in women's groups right now after work. Offices, that's what offices used to be, were just all male spaces where they could get that same support. So I think in our supporting each other, there's room for all of us to succeed. And I think at least I grew up feeling like there was only one slot. And that was really, it deterred me from trying for a while. In fact, when I was first making Trickster, I had a couple guys that had volunteered to do like color and music, and I put them on my website as like part of the team, even though they weren't part of the like core filmmaking team. We were all women, but I was afraid that because we were all women, we wouldn't be taken seriously. So that's why I put the men on my page. And I look back on that, I think that's so sad. I thought other people in the outside world wouldn't take me seriously just because I'm working with all women. And it was actually Emily Best, the founder of WIMPs, who said to me, no, that's your superpower, is you're an all women team. And that hasn't been done. And so then I took the men off the page, and ever since I've been like, we're an all women team and you want to work with us, especially now in today's climate. It's interesting just in the past 5 years, how much that's shifted and how desired our voices are in the telling of stories and in the creation of the telling of stories. So I think it's an exciting time finally to be a woman in film.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that your experience speaks volumes, and I'm new at this podcasting thing, so I hope that I'm getting better. Maybe we can do this again sometime. A year down the road, where I'm better at interviewing people. And I'm like freaking out. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. It's exciting to have a women in post podcast. Are you kidding me? That would have been so. I didn't see female editors when I first moved to LA. It took me like a year until I saw my first one.
Uh-huh.
You don't see us, and it's hard to think there's a space for you if there's no visibility, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of what we do kind of caters to people who are introverts. I don't know if are you an introvert or an extrovert? Yeah.
Introvert all the way. Extroverted introvert, but introvert for sure.
Yeah, and so we just kind of want to do what we want to do, and we forget to connect with people until we discover the value of connecting people. And I think that's kind of what happened. That's kind of where this podcast came from. When my grandma, honestly, was just like, you need to learn how to talk to people. And she'd bring me to the doctor's office with her and show me how she should talk to the doctor or the nurse or some random person. And then after they'd leave, she'd like pat me on the leg and be like, see how I did that? Like, you need to practice. So she actually...
I had the same thing. One of my best friends is like the most extroverted butterfly person. And I used to watch her like in high school because I was so quiet, and I would watch her and watch. I'm like, oh, all she's doing is asking people questions, and people love to talk about themselves. And therefore people like her more because and I'm like, okay. And I kind of learned how to survive, honestly, in more crowded places from watching her just be good at it, and now I'm better. I mean, I'm not comfortable. Networking at film festivals is like, but
yeah.
I'm working on it.
It's terrifying. Like, you go in there and it seems like everybody's already having a conversation. And how do you approach that situation?
Oh God. I wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes repeating things I've said in those situations to myself, like, oh, why'd you say that?
Yes.
I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer because I don't feel like I'm good at that or I do that well. I usually have a friend with me, and then I don't know. Alcohol helps, but I don't want to promote that.
Put a little extra something in your drink.
A shot of vodka. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's why I really like those kind of more intimate WIMPs meetups, because you're in a space where everyone feels awkward, and you can walk up and be like, "Hi, I'm Jillian, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. Who are you?" And just do that bit, because, oh man, yeah, I've put my foot in my mouth before, just like trying to be casual about it, but nothing about me is casual. So I don't have any advice for that.
Mm-hmm. But it hasn't held you back. It seems like you're doing just fine.
Great. I think you can do better, but I think authenticity is the key. And I think there's something really off-putting, especially in LA, with people who are, you have a conversation with someone and they're just trying to see what you can do for them. And I don't want to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Especially like when I meet people that I really admire, I just shouldn't even talk to them because it's just embarrassing, Oh, I'm like, my palms are getting sweaty now, even just thinking about it.
Mine are too, like rubbing them on my pants. Like, oh my gosh. But like you need to talk to those people. Like, you need to talk to your heroes, and because they need to know, they need to know that they've made an impact on you. And
I met in the festival circuit with Second Assault, I met Kirby who's the director of The Hunting Ground and Invisible War. And The Hunting Ground is the film that inspired me to write that police officer and essentially set my film in motion. And luckily I knew someone who knew Kirby, so I got an email intro before meeting him at the festival, but I went up to him and he watched Second Assault and he said really nice things. And yeah, it's awesome to kind of have that connection, even if it's, at a distance. But I was a nervous wreck when I met him,
Mm-hmm.
I should probably like work on things you can say and memorize them or something.
My sister was trying to help me with that the other day, and it was so funny because she's like, all you need to do is my brother had a baby shower, And everybody was coming up to me and saying, because we like planned it, and they're like, oh, you did such a good job. You did so wonderful with this and this and this. And I would like freeze, like, because I didn't want the focus to be on me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know like what to do with that. And my sister was just like, oh, just say, I'm happy you had such a good time. And like, it just seems like such a common sense thing to do that just like doesn't occur to people that are like me instead of her, I guess. But
yeah, no, I get it. I spend
memorizing
most of
a
my
lot.
time editing from my apartment, talking to my 2 cats all day long. So I get it.
So Jillian, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I feel like we've learned a lot and bonded a lot over being a little bit awkward and a little bit introverted, yet having to be extroverts and communicate and build relationships. So thank you so much for everything. And
Yeah, thank you for having me.
thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, give us a like, leave us a question or comment, and share with your friends. Your viewership and support helps promote women working in film. Follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us on YouTube, and join our Patreon community. Interested in being a guest or sponsor on the show? Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. See you next week on Women in Post.